Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Regina Yao, and I'm moderating the sixth YouTube session of the ninth fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. Now, through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 11 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. Now, we'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later. And you can find out more about the Pixel Project and violence against women by visiting www.thepixelproject.net. Now, we have a very special guest for today's live Read for Pixels discussion and Q&A session. And ta-da! It's the fabulous YA fantasy, dark fantasy, and horror author Rin Chupeco. Now, Rin is a non-binary Chinese-Filipino writer born and raised in the Philippines, and Rin is actually currently in the Philippines. And they are the author of several speculative young adult series, including the Bone Witch trilogy, the Girl from the Well series, the Never Tilting World, and Wicked as You Wish, and of the new adult gothic vampire fantasy series that's just been released, Silver Under Nightfall. Rin is formerly a graphic designer and technical writer, and they now write fiction full-time and live with their partner and two children in Manila. And Rin has also generously donated some super exclusive goodies to the stash of author treats we have up as perks for donors at the Read for Pixels Rally Out fundraising page. Now, the first goodie is a really, really cool one. And Rin immortalizes you as a vampire prince or vampire priestess. Now, this is a major supporting character. So it's the first time ever on Read for Pixels that an author is offering a major supporting character as the Tuckerization treat. And this will be open to Read for Pixels donors in the US. And you have one opportunity to name the major supporting character in the sequel to Silver Under Nightfall, which is out now. Silver Under Nightfall is out now, not the sequel. Sequel will be out in the future. And one signed copy of the book when it is released to keep as a memento. And the donor will have two choices. Option one, name a young male vampire poised to become the leader of one of the vampire courts, but whose inexperience makes him unable to keep up with the court's political intrigues. Option two, name a young female priestess who is in charge of a hidden temple that has served the vampire faction for centuries. And because Rin is super cool, both can also be coded as non-binary, and Rin may incorporate some additional aspects of the donor to further customize the character. So it won't be just your name. And terms and conditions apply. Please, if you are interested in this super cool treat, please make sure when you click on the treat on our fundraising page, you look at more details. There's a bit with terms and conditions. Click on that to go to the terms and conditions page. Please read carefully through it because you will be expected to adhere to it. And now for goodie number 2 is the Rin Chupeco Books and Swag Bundle. Now, Rin will be giving away some very exclusive book and swag bundles to four Read for Pixels donors in the US. And the bundle includes one copy of Silver Under Nightfall, a first edition hardcover together with a signed book plate. And one set of stickers of Tia and Kaylin. Is it Tia or Tia?
Taya.
Taya. Taya and Kaylin from the Bone Witch, Lan, Arjun, Odessa, and Heidi from the Never Tilting World, Tark from The Girl from the Well, Tala, Alex, and the Firebird from Wicked as You Wish. So a whole bunch of stickers. And one set of signed art prints. Now, if you're a huge fan of art, this is the one that's going to excite you. The prints of Taya from the Bone Witch, Dan, Arjun, Odessa, and Heidi from the Never Tilting World, Tala and Alex from Wicked as You Wish, and Remy Pendergast from Silver Under Nightfall. And there are also and this seems never ending. This is such a cool bundle. And free enamel pins of the Never Tilting World, the Bone Witch and Wicked Sea Witch. Now, Rin has a copy of the hardcover, Silver and the Nightfall, here to show you. Yay! So awesome. So there's actually one of the four bundles that's actually gone. So we would like to say a very, very heartfelt thank you to Brittany Marino for donating to get one of the bundles. Now there are only 3 bundles left. So if you're in the audience today and you've heard what's in the bundle and you would like to get a bundle, please go to our fundraising page. There's 3 left. Once they're gone, they're gone. This is not an auction. These are actual treats, gifts from Rin herself, Rin themselves. My apologies, Rin themselves to you for supporting our work to end violence against women. And we've raised $1,830 so far towards our very modest $5,000 goal. So please give generously before the fundraiser ends in October 2022. All funds go towards our work to help end violence against women. And now, if you are watching this session on YouTube right now, you will also be able to ask Rin questions live. Just make sure you are logged into your YouTube account so that you can type your questions into the chat box to the right of the YouTube screen. And Juliana, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay them to me to read out to Rin to answer. And now over to Rin. Welcome to Read for Pixels, Rin. We are so honored to have you here. What will you be reading for us today?
So for today, I will be reading an excerpt from The Girl from the Well. So this one is the latest paperback cover. It's different from when it was first released way back in 2014. And I'll be reading a bit of the first chapter. Okay. I am where dead children go. With other kinds of dead, it is different. Often, their souls drift quietly away, like a leaf caught in the throes of a hidden whirlpool, slipping down without sound, away from sight. They roll and ebb gently with the tides until they sink beneath the waves and I no longer see where they go. Like sputtering candlelight, like little embers that burn briefly and brightly for several drawn moments before their light goes out. But they are not my territory. They are not my hunt. And then there are the murdered dead, and they are peculiar, stranger things. You may think me biased, being murdered myself, but my state of being has nothing to do with curiosity toward my own species, if we can be called such. We do not go gentle, as your poet encourages, into that good night. We do not go because people do not let us go. The man refuses to let her go, though he does not know this yet. He is inside an apartment that smells of dirty cigarettes and stale beer. He sits on a couch and watches television, where a man tells jokes. But this man who wears a stained white shirt, with his pudgy arms and foul vapors, this man does not laugh. He has too much hair on his head and on his face and on his chest, and he is drinking from a bottle and not listening to anything but the alcohol in his thoughts. His mind tastes like sour wine, a dram of sake, left out in the dark for too long. There are other things inside this apartment that he owns. There are filthy jackets of shiny fabric, 3. Empty bottles, 21. Dribbled dregs of brown liquid onto the floor. Thin tobacco stalks, 5. Are grounded on a tiny tray, smoke curling over their stunted remains. There are other things inside the apartment that he does not own. Small, pale, pink scratches of cloth, snagged against nails in the floorboards, 3. A golden strand of hair, smothered within the confines of wood, 1. Something gurgles from somewhere nearby. It is a loud and sudden noise, and it penetrates through the haze of his inebriation, startling him. The stained shirt man turns his head to a nearby wall and shouts, You better fix that toilet tomorrow, Shamrock, mistaking one problem for another. If he is expecting a reply, he does not receive it, but he does not seem to care. He does not look my way because he does not see me. Not yet, but she does. I can tell she has not been dead long. Her long, yellow hair hangs limply around her waist, her skin gray and brittle and bloated. The man drowned her quickly, so quickly that she does not realize it. This is why her mouth opens and closes, why she gulps at intervals like a starving fish, why she is puzzled at the way she does not breathe. Her blue eyes look into mine from where I lie hidden, shrouded in shadow. An understanding passes between us, for I, too, remember that terrible weight of water. Her prison had been of ceramic, mine wrought from cobbled stones. In the end, it made little difference to either of us. The stained shirt man does not see her either. She does not notice the thin, bony arms clasped about his neck, or the manner in which her little rag dress is hiked up above her hips, her legs balanced against the small of his back. He does not notice the beginnings of decay that are ravaging a face that should have been delicate and pretty. Many people are like him. They do not feel burdened by the weight of those they kill. A rope braid around her thin wrist is attached to another folded over the man's arm. I wear a similar loop around my wrist, though unlike her, I endure this affliction with no one else. The rope trails several feet behind me, the edges shorn. The man talking from inside the television disappears, and the thrum of static buzzes at the stained shirt man's consciousness, nagging at him like an angry bee. Cursing again, he tosses his empty bottle away and strides to the box, fiddling with dials. He is still angry when the lights in the room wink out one by one, leaving him nothing for company but the still fizzling TV. He kicks it for good measure. The noises stop, and the television flickers back on, but the man telling jokes is nowhere to be seen. Instead, for a few seconds, something else flashes across the screen. It is a wide, staring eye, and it is looking back at him. It disappears, though the buzzing continues. The man gapes. He is afraid at first. That delicious fear steals across his face. But when the image does not repeat itself soon, he begins to think, and then to argue, and then to dismiss, the way people do when they are seeking explanations for things that cannot be explained. Must have imagined it, he mutters to himself. The girl on his back says nothing. The stained shirt man moves to the bathroom and frowns when he turns on a switch but sees only darkness. Nonetheless, he moves towards the sink and begins to wash his face. When he lifts his head, I am standing directly behind him, but only the top of my head and my eyes are visible over his own. The face rising over the back of his skull is one I have worn for many centuries, an oddity for me who has only seen 16 years of life. But I have little cause to see myself in reflections, and sometimes I forget the face is mine. Our gazes meet in the mirror, and the stained shirt man shouts in alarm, stepping away. But when he turns back, all he sees is his own sweating face, drenched in water and fear. Something gurgles again. This time, it is closer. The stained shirt man's eyes swing towards the bathtub. It is covered in dirt and grime and thin traces of bile. A large pool of blood is forming underneath it, spiraling outward until it touches the tips of his leather boots. Tag, the blood is saying. You are it. And from inside this bathtub, a decomposing hand reaches out, grabbing the side with enough strength that the porcelain cracks from the urgency of its grip. The stained shirt man slides to the floor in shock and fright, legs suddenly useless, as I heave myself up and over the side of the bathtub to land in a heap of flesh before him. I am writhing. My body stiffens and contracts, tangled hair obscuring enough features that you would not know what I am, only what I am not. I gurgle a third time. The stained shirt man crawls back into the living room, swearing and screaming. He stumbles back onto his feet, tries to feel his way through the dark. The sputtering light of the television set his only guide. He finds the door and tugs at it frantically, but it will not open. Help me! Oh God, help me! He begins to drive his shoulder against the wood, his efforts redoubling once he realizes I have followed him out of the bathroom. Slithering, slithering, bone joints cracking and noisy from disuse. There is terrible contorting in the way the figure he sees moves. It does not crawl. It does not speak. There is only a dreadful, singular purpose in the way its fingers and feet scuttle closer, spread from its body like a human spider, though I am neither human nor spider. Was it the girl? The stained shirt man asked then, and in his piggish eyes, dreadful realization seeps through. Was it the girl? I didn't mean to. I never. I swear I won't do it again. I swear. I won't do it again. He is right. He will never do this again. Please, he croaks, lifting his hands as if they could shield him. And whether he is asking for mercy or wishes to be killed quicker, I do not know. Please, 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 please. Something gurgles one last time, and it is above him. He looks up. This is how the stained shirt man now sees me. He sees a woman on the ceiling. Her gray feet are bare, settled against the beams. She hangs down. Her chin is jutted out, her head twisted to the side in a way that the only thing certain is her broken neck. She wears a loose white kimono, spattered in mud and blood. Her hair floats down, drifting past her face like a thinly veiled curtain, but this does not protect him from the sight of her eyes. There are no whites in her eyes. They are an impenetrable, dilated black. Her skin is a mottled patchwork of abuse and bone, some of it stripped from the edges of her mouth. And yet her mouth is hollow, curved into a perpetual scream, jaws too wide to be alive. For a long moment, we stare at each other. He, another girl's murderer, and I, another man's victim. Then my mouth widens further, and I detach myself from the ceiling to lunge, my unblinking eyes boring into his panic, screaming face.
That was awesome. That's justice for violence against women in done well in speculative fiction. Thank you so much, Rin. And if anyone has not read The Girl from the Well, please get your copy. And you could probably get it depending on where you are in the world, right? Is that the US edition, Rin, or?
It's a US edition, but I believe they are doing this internationally as well. This is also the international cover. I believe that Walmart actually has their own cover version of both The Girl from the Well and The Suffering as well. So if you're interested in the Walmart version, it's available there. This is the newest, the cover variant.
That's a
Just
really cool cover. She's
yeah.
hanging upside down, just as you described just now in the
Yeah, it
cover.
really takes in the whole spirit of the book, and I really love it.
Yeah. So let's begin our discussion. And there's also a question from the audience that will include in the discussion as we go along. So let's begin. So your books feature some really compelling female characters, ranging from Thea, the Bone Witch with the gift of necromancy in the Bone Witch series, to Okiku, the vengeful girl spirit from the superbly scary The Girl from the Well series that we just met during your reading. If anyone's new to Rin's books, you've just heard a snippet from that series. They are complex and well-rounded characters of agency who challenge the sexism and misogyny they encounter in the world around them. Now, who or what are your inspirations for your female characters?
Well, the most basic aspect of most of those female characters actually stem from me, and that specific basic feature is the rage. That, I think that a lot of my female characters, especially Taya from the Bone Witch and Okiku in The Girl from the Well, is really channeling inner rage as their motivation for a lot of the things that they do in their stories. And I think that mainly comes from my own inner rage, I guess. um, when you live in the Philippines, it's not really the place where you think justice is gonna happen, if any at all. So there's a lot of things that I sort of started internalizing, especially when you look at the news, when you look at all the bad things that have been happening, and you can't really help but feel angry. And I've always tried to find a way to channel that into more uh, less self-destructive means, and I've always found it very cathartic to do it in writing. And then there's also inspirations that I see in the Philippines as well. Like, it's not always, so bleak and despairing as when I as I make it out to be. There are so many good people here who are trying to make everything a better place for everyone, despite other people who aren't as appreciative or as grateful for it. And I take a lot of inspiration from them. Like, it could be like this a female politician who is fighting for like just basic human rights for women. Could be like even just that teenager who made the news at one time because she fought against somebody who was trying to harass her and actually punched him. And in my when I first heard that in the news of like, go girl. And it's the little things, that you find in everyday life that I find inspiration from. And good people are all around you. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, and all genres have their shares of female stereotypes and tropes, and your books do lean into various tropes, including the chosen one trope that is ubiquitous in YA fantasy, and the vengeful woman that is a classic horror female stereotype. Yet, your female characters are anything but stereotypical. So, how do you subvert these stereotypes to create a female character with agency while dealing with the world around her, including sexism, misogyny, and violence against women and girls?
I try to treat them. I try to treat my characters like they're human beings. Like, they have their own flaws, they have their own weaknesses, but there has to be that spark. There has to be that thing inside of them that makes them the main characters in my story. Like, if they're just some angry stereotypical like vengeful woman ghost, for example, I don't think that it's going to be enough to carry them in the story. Like, you need something a little more substantial within their characters to be able to carry a story. And I just try to incorporate aspects of my own experiences into them. So whether or not they're a ghost trying to do what she couldn't do in life, which is to avenge other like, children like her who have been murdered, or try to hunt down serial killers, or something like Taya from the Bone Witch, who just wants to rail against the injustices that she sees in society, even though it makes her like the public enemy number one in that society's eyes. Or it could even be just a vampire hunter trying to make their way through the world, trying to figure out where they stand, whether or not they should go for the norms of society or push back against it, because he like everybody knows that it's the right thing to do, and he wants to push through it and see for himself that there's more to him than just being a vampire hunter, for example. And I just want multifaceted characters, and it's easier to say but harder to do, because you need to find a way to balance their nobility, their goodness, with other kinds of flaws that makes them more sympathetic, makes them more something that can resonate with readers, because they see in them their own faults, maybe their own weaknesses, but also their own strengths.
Okay. So, working on the premise that an author's gender can play a role in how well women and girls are portrayed in their books, has being a non binary person influenced the way you write women and girls in your stories, while also helping with dismantling binary gendered roles and gender stereotypes?
Well, the problem with being non-binary here in the Philippines in particular is that nobody knows what non-binary is. Like the older folks, you ask them what non-binary is, they're just gonna stare at you and go, "Is that like a computer program or something?" And it gets a little disheartening. Although the younger generation is great, like know, they know what non-binary is. I have so many people I know so many people who are non-binary here in the Philippines, but it's a little more difficult to sort of push that thing through the older people's heads because they're not that uh, receptive to change for the most part. But I mean, I was raised female. Like, I know I'm non-binary, but I was raised female because my parents didn't know. And I mean, they're accepting of who I am now, but when you're raised as female, you get into all the issues and all the problems that comes with being female as well. Like in the Philippines, there is this term called the Maria Clara. Maria Clara is actually a character based on a very famous book here in the Philippines called Noli Me Tangere by Jose Rizal, which is also who is also our national hero. And the concept of Maria Clara is this dainty woman who is sheltered, who is a good housewife, who would make a perfect partner for like the hero of the story, who will support him through thick and thin, and that's not bad in itself, but there's also this sense that you take away the freedom, your personal freedom that the Maria Clara sort of is built for the most part to be something that's kind and generous, but also very submissive to the hero or her partner, and that's still something that a lot of people here idealize, which is not always a good thing because it takes away independence from a lot of women here as well. And I'm happy to say that a lot of women are like pushing back against that trope. Like, yeah, you can be kind, you can be generous, you can dance well or whatever, but you also you're also a person and you need to assert who you are as a person as well in order to be yourself, be true to yourself. And so when you're raised female growing up, these are the sort of things that you see, and you see the differences between how females are treated and how women are treated and how men are treated. And it I mean, there's this I growing up, I knew from a very young age that I did not want to be, treated as either a woman or a man. And it was hard for me to explain exactly what it is until the internet happened here. And I went online and I went into all these groups that said, "Oh, well, you don't have to be if you don't want to be." And that premise was so simple. Like, I was so surprised. Like, why did I think of that before? If I don't want to be this certain stereotype or this certain thing that people want me to be, then why should I? So I think I understand that it changes hard, but I am also very happy to see that change still happening here in the Philippines regardless, and I am looking forward to more.
Okay, so does it has it like basically has that perspective influenced the way you write your female characters?
I've as of late I've been writing more non-binary characters actually. Like
Mhm.
before that, like in my older books, my earlier books, I wrote characters that were non-binary, but they're not stated as being non-binary on page, and I wanted to change that. Like once I fully understood what it was, like something that I should embrace as well, I decided to start writing more non-binary characters, not just as characters of the book, but also as like protagonists and as the main characters in the story. Like in I have an upcoming horror book called The Sacrifice, uh, and Alon, who is the name of my protagonist in that story, is non-binary, and I was very proud of how I sort of framed them in the story. Like they're not, like, you don't really know for sure how, how they were raised. Like, does this person look male? Does this person look female? You're not going to know much about that because it doesn't matter. Like, I wanted to emphasize that point in particular. Like what you look like doesn't matter. Who you are is what matters. So that, I hope that's something that kind of comes through in the pages when it came to writing non-binary characters in my story. And I just basically wrote things based on my own experiences. Again, like, how would I be treating this certain issue as a non-binary person? How would I be reacting to something as a non-binary person? And I sort of just integrated a lot of those into my works. And when it comes to writing females as well, like, again, I was raised female, so I do have an understanding of how it is to be, like, all the issues that comes with being female. And all those issues in particular are something that I pushed back on. Like, they say don't be so angry, so I wrote characters that were extremely angry. And they say, don't, you have to listen to your elders, listen to the people older than you. And I have characters that completely disobey and go against their, like, the elders orders, because they know it's the right thing to do, even though it's part of society's norms. So it's those little things that I try to incorporate and try to make sure that it's something that's not too obvious when I write about it, but something that still stands out nonetheless.
Yeah, and it's a really good message to send because you said that you told us before we went on air that the sacrifice is a YA horror book, and I think it's a really, I mean, personally, I think that's a really good message to send to young people, that it's not how you look, it's who you are. It's who you are inside that matters the most.
Absolutely.
And going back to, so let's talk about pressure. Your female characters are tough and multifaceted women and girls, some of whom, like Okiku, are not afraid of using violence as retribution or to exact justice against abusive and misogynistic men and systems. Now, in the case of Asian female characters, readers may perceive their strength, determination, resourcefulness, and very human flaws as unlikable or ruthless, instead of lauding them as likable or strong and determined as they would if they were male and white. Now, do you ever feel pressured by gender and cultural stereotypes to make your female characters likable or relatable? Do you ever get any flack for any unlikable female, what people perceive as unlikable, not you, what you perceive as unlikable, but what people, your readers, perceive as unlikable? Do you get any flack for that?
Yeah, like, I think the biggest one I remember was in when The Girl from the Well first came out, and that was with this character called Callie. And Callie is the cousin of Tark, who is one of the main characters in the story. And she's basically the older sort of sister-like figure that looks out for him when he gets into trouble, especially when he gets into trouble with ghosts, because he gets involved with ghosts in a very uh, horrifying way. And a lot of what I've seen was a lot of people actually criticizing her for making bad decisions and absolutely ignoring Tark when he makes the bad decisions. Like, for every bad decision that Callie makes, Tark makes like three or four more in response. And it was weird to me that she got so much flack for maybe one or two things that she did in the story that she did out of concern for Tark or out of panic, maybe. But Tark got got the like nobody really talked about him, like nobody really criticized any of the actions that he made. And I found that that was so very unfair. Like you would put so much pressure on Callie to be this perfect this perfect cousin, while at the same time ignoring the fact that Tark has been in so much trouble and would have been in even more trouble if not for her. And he gets a pass. So yeah, that was like one of the things that I was really pushing on because I love Cali, and I said, this is what a normal like teenage girl would do when faced with a horrifying situation like that. So it's not on you to sort of decide or judge her when you're obviously not judging her. And I mean that's just one of a lot of many things. Like I know there's a lot of criticism for Taya the Bone Witch as well, although there's not as much like explanation or reasons why they might dislike her. It's just they just say something like like I just dislike her for the sake of disliking her, but doesn't really give much reasons. And but on the plus side, they were very very enthusiastic with their praise with the other male characters in the story, which again I found extremely unfair. So yeah, those are the things that just some of the things that I've noticed, but I really do try to push back whenever I hear things like that. Like I defend my female characters right to to be as strong as they need, but also at the same time to be as flawed as they are, as they need to be, because they're human as well.
Yeah, and the double standards are just really stubbornly hanging in there. It's really irritating, isn't it? The double standards for, how women act and how women are perceived when they act in one way and how men are perceived when they do the same thing. It's just really infuriating.
Yeah, and like that. I mean, I've seen it in real life, like in person, not just to myself but to other people. So it's doubly infuriating that fictional characters, you don't even like give them a pass. Like you have to put them on some kind of weird pedestal just to assuage whatever I don't know, whatever your own personal hangups about women are.
Yeah, and I actually this brought to mind a recent on Facebook. There was a recent conversation about someone posted that they didn't like Joanna Constantine in the recent Netflix adaptation of The Sandman by Neil Gaiman, and there was a whole discussion there. People pushing back against the person who posted that, saying, "Well, would you say the same thing if it was John Constantine? Because
He's
Joanna
worse.
and John, well, they're exhibiting the same type of personality traits, right? So
Yeah,
why are you judging Joanna more harshly than and but if this was John, you would say, oh, that's so cool.
yeah, like I love Sandman. I love Neil Gaiman. Like Neil Gaiman was the one person who actually gave me that push to start writing, and I will always be grateful to him for that. And John Constantine is actually my favorite character, like my favorite DC character. And to see that double again, like you said, see that double standard of allowing a guy to be this smoking, foul swearing, you know, rebel without a cause sort of character, but not do the same thing when it's a female character is very frustrating. You're right.
Yeah. Oh, here's a Mark Hurst from the audience just wants to say Kylie was amazing.
Thank you, Mark. I think she's amazing too, but I think I'm very biased as well.
So let's move on to talking about matriarchy and sisterhood. So the world of the Bone Witch series is one where a matriarchy and sisterhood of powerful witches exists, but it is not idealized, and that's really important. It's not idealized given that they also have blind spots, including ostracizing any witch, such as bone witches, whom they fear. This sets the scene for depicting a wide variety of female characters and relationships. Now, a positive and or in-depth depiction of female friendships and relationships seems to be rare in most speculative fiction books, although it's been getting better over the past decade. Why did you decide to explore the theme of women connecting, building, or rejecting relationships ranging from family ties to friendships?
Well, I wanted to. I mean, you know how fandoms go sometimes, right? Like two guys start fighting with each other on screen, and suddenly people start shipping them. Like, oh, they're in a relationship because they're fighting. And I found it I've always found it so amusing that it's just that one thing that allows them to forge this immediate relationship without any other previous interaction in the past sometimes. And I wanted to do that. I want to do something more complex and more complicated when it comes to female relationships. I wanted, I mean, I was in a all girl private school when I was a teenager, and the very sort of, well, most of my friendship, like I still am very close friends with a lot of the people that I've met there in that particular school. Even today, there I consider them a lot of my very close, my very best friends actually. And you know what, as we grew up together in a sense, I mean, I came out as non-binary, and a lot of other people in that school also came out as non-binary or trans or uh I mean, it's very complicated knowing we have that shared bond, like growing up in a all girls, being taught in an all girls school for most of your life, and then having to navigate these new complex feelings, these new relationships, and these new discoveries about yourself. So I wanted to sort of replicate that in my writing, and I wanted to base it on my own experiences in my own life, how women and how like trans men or trans women and other people in the LGBTQ community sort of navigate their way through relationships. And I wanted to show them that, hey, there is more to, more to relationships with other people than just a sudden, like a sudden, they're fighting, therefore they're getting married sort of trope that usually seems to crop up when it comes to guys. I wanted to explore something a little more heartwarming, more sentimental, and I wanted to just basically convey the complexities of relationships that women have in the story.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the whole they're fighting and therefore they're going to have a relationship trope is kind of toxic. I mean, can we have a respectful, healthy, sentimental relationship without fighting, without any violence? That's more healthy, right? It's, if we don't start in
Absolutely.
violence. Yeah. So before we go to talking about men in your books, let's look at some of the questions from the audience. So let's see. Oh, here we go. Misty 306. Hi, Misty 306. Welcome back. Misty is one of our usual viewers when we have Read for Pixel sessions. So
Hi,
Misty is also
Misty.
a librarian. Misty is also a librarian. Um, so she asks, you write dark fantasy slash horror. Would you say your stories are based on a blend of both Eastern and Western horror tropes and earlier works?
Oh, absolutely. Like growing up in the Philippines, we are, well, Filipinos, I think, for the most part, not all of us, but for the most part, are very into trends, and those trends also apply to media. And since American media is very popular here in the Philippines, we sort of give ourselves to those as well. And I'm speaking for myself as well because I love so many like American media, video games, movies, TV series, like we usually are in the know when it comes to that, and that's the same when I was growing up as well. Like a lot of TV shows that are featured here in the Philippines were a lot of American media. Like I grew up watching things like Are You Afraid of the Dark, for example. Like that was a standard in my childhood and something that I absolutely adore. And I read books like Sweet Valley and the Babysitters Club, The Three Investigators, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, what have you. And so those were extremely influential with me, especially when it comes to horror as well, because I grew up watching, Chainsaw Texas Massacre. Like, I love Stephen King's books. Like Pet Cemetery was actually the first adult book that I read when I was 7 years old, and my parents were not happy about it at first, but they understood eventually. And I do really love a lot of horror movies, like Friday the 13th. But I was also raised on a lot of Asian ghost stories, and also a lot of Asian media. So the combination of more of that gory body horror type of American media when it comes to horror, like uh, again, like Friday the 13th, Halloween, and all that, and then pair it with the more psychological mind screw movies like The Grudge or The Ring or Dark Water or A Tale of Two Sisters, and you sort of start combining the things that you like best about both genres and then integrate them into your work. So uh, I'm not really much into writing gore. I will write body horror because I do like body horror. I like the weird ways that a human body can change, but I also really, really like the psychological aspects of it, which is more prominent in Asian horror, where just the sight of a ghost, even without any blood, even without even if they're like thin and not as intimidating as say Freddy Krueger, but still is enough to inspire fear in you. Those are the things that I love, and I try as much as I can to blend of both those aspects, those aspects that I love, and then try to integrate it into like my body of work.
All right. And there's also a really nice question from Mark Hurst. Will we ever get to see a movie or series adaptation of any of your work? I really hope so. Yeah, I really hope so too. Will we?
Oh, I actually don't know how to answer that because I just want to say that there might be some things in the works, but I can't deny or verify whether or not things are moving along because I'm not supposed to, I guess. But there has been interest. There has been interest for a while now, but the problem was COVID kind of put a damper on a lot of them, and a lot of things we're still waiting for. A lot of things are not yet really given the go signal yet. I mean, obviously, but uh, when my agent and I first started discussing things like this, the thing she really wanted to impress upon me was that these things take so much time. Like it could take years, because she's known other she's known other agents where things have been happening for for so long, and no, they haven't even seen the light of day yet. Like they've been processing things even longer than mine, and nothing's been happening yet. And it's not really the film agent's fault. It's not my fault. It's not my agent's fault. It's just how Hollywood moves, and Hollywood moves at a very glacial pace. So yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I can't really answer that. All I can say is that there has been interest, but there is no movement for now.
Yeah. And everyone, please remember that even something as awesome as The Sandman took 20 years. Was it 30 years to hit the
Yeah.
screen? Yeah. So, it will come. It will, we all just have to wait. So let's get back to the main discussion. So there are misogynistic characters in your books, and the male-female relationships between though the male and female relationships between some of the main characters in some of your books are generally quite equitable. So do you think reframing how stories describe men away from hostile and toxic stereotypes and towards complexity and even vulnerability can be one of the ways that speculative fiction authors can break away from horrible tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women?
I think that is just as important as boosting women characters as well. Like, it's just as important to portray, to portray male characters as having their own feelings, having their own motivations, having their own emotions, and not being like criticized by society for experiencing those emotions or feeling those emotions, because it's such a natural thing to do. I I mean, it's, when people think of the word feminist, they usually almost always just assume that it's to support women's rights, but that is actually not what being a feminist is all about. Being a feminist means to make sure that both male character, well, not male characters, both men and women are equally treated, based on like whatever issues are related to them. So with women, it's about, not about trying to boost them up, trying to support them and make sure that they're not just being treated as something that's submissive to men. And at the same time, it's also men trying to make sure that men are given also the mental emotional spaces to become themselves and to sort of undo all those toxic, like all those toxic things that they were taught when they were being raised by the older generation, for example. And for me, I think they're both equally important.
Hmm. Oh, there's some responses from the audience to what your answer about any adaptations of your work being coming very slowly. So Miles at Maximum says, Rin, if
Oh,
Chesley can do it, so can you.
I think Chese was a bit different. Like I know the creator, Budget Tan, and he is amazing. I love Chese. Chese is sort of a really this popular underground indie comic thing in the Philippines since early 2000s, I think. So long before Chese came into the global audience, we knew what Chese was and we love it so much. So, I think Chese went through a different uh route than what most film agents in Hollywood would encourage you to go through. And I'm very happy for him that he found a lot of like amazing success with Trece. But that was not what my my agent and my film agents were going with. For I mean, there are certain reasons why they chose not to go through that route, and it's not really something I can talk about online. But all I can say is that I do understand why they're choosing a different route for me than what they did for Trece. And I do support them. I do understand why they're doing that. So again, I wish I could say more, but I really can't say more.
Yeah. Oh, and Mark Hurst, who asked the original question, says, I will be waiting then. I really hope. Um,
Thank you. I hope so too, because I'll be waiting along with a lot of you.
and Missy306 says, thank you for answering my question. I read many of those series too.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you as well.
Yeah. So, stories are one of the most powerful ways of bringing about social change. So, let's talk about writing stories and genre. The line between consent and coercion isn't always very clear in speculative fiction books, including horror, fantasy, and science fiction. Certainly in the horror and dark fantasy genre, and in some subgenres of fantasy, such as grimdark epic fantasy, violence against women is still often used as a catalyst for a male character's development or as a shorthand for showing how brutal that particular story world is. Do you think that this is an issue that speculative fiction writers have started tackling successfully in recent years?
Mm, well, I do think that when violence against women are usually incorporated in books, it's usually meant as a shock factor, like I it's a plot twist. I made you cry, or I shocked you. So that's for the most part a lot of the purpose that lies behind putting that kind of violence. And I've noticed that it's very more frequent with male writers. And I mean, I think, like, this is just my personal opinion, but I think that the reason why a lot of male writers choose violence against women, again, those in a more physical aspect, that's not just like beating each other up or just killing somebody, like something that's a lot more grotesque, I guess, is what I want to say. They write more about that kind of violence against women more than they write about violence against men, because writing about that kind of violence against men makes them uncomfortable. Like this, they're not, they sort of understand what that kind of violence to men would they can like they can imagine, I guess, what that would feel like in relation to them as a person, and that's what makes them uncomfortable. Whereas when you're writing violence against women, it's something that they treat as, oh, this is something that happens in everyday life, this is something that this is a reality that people are for the most part more accustomed to. So that's where they go. And I feel like, if you want to if you want to be fair and equal and equitable and all that, you should learn it's either you should learn how to write about that kind of violence against men as well, or not write any of them altogether. And I am a big proponent of the second one. Like, I don't believe that writing about violence against women is something that would improve the book, or something that will improve like a male character's like development. Like, off the top of my head, Game of Thrones is the first thing that comes to mind. And I do not like that aspect of Game of Thrones, because I mean, nobody, I don't think anybody talks about Game of Thrones anymore. Nobody wants to talk about that last season. But I do think that it's a lazy writing technique for writers to get you involved in the story, like to get you invested in a certain character. I think that writers who are better at writing, better in their writing techniques, will be able to circumvent that. Like, they'll be able to write a story where character development is extremely well done, without having to write it about, you know like showing violence against women as a sort of kick the dog moment. And that's what I try my hardest to do in my own works.
Yeah, and it's sad, isn't it? When when there's so many people who say, "I will never watch a movie or read a book where the dog gets killed or kicked," and if you've seen the reaction to in John Wick, the first movie, you see the audience reaction to the bad guys killing his dog, and everyone feels justified that John Wick went after them partly because they killed his dog, right? But at the same time, the same audience doesn't have the same reaction to women getting killed and maimed on screen and in books, and it's really it's and if you bring it up, they'll go, the whole fig leaf um, excuse that, oh, this is just entertainment. Why are you taking this so seriously? That's really, really irritating.
That
That,
is true. That
yeah,
is very true. Like the idea of like animals getting injured or getting killed outright still for some reason seems to be a lot more heinous than the same things happening to women, because again society sort of normalizes it as something that happens, like it's not something society would aspire to, but it happens nonetheless. So it's something you have to live with. Whereas there seems to be this ongoing mindset where that doesn't happen. Like animals going through that same route is not something that normal society should condone. And yeah, the difference is very, again, frustrating.
yeah. Oh, so speaking of writing, there is a question about writing from the audience. Miles at Maximum asks, so my big goal is to write my own dark fantasy series. One of the challenges I face is writing with gender and diversity. What advice could you give to today's Caucasian writers? Thanks.
I think that it is it is hard to write characters that's not of one's ethnicity or of one's gender, of one's race. And even like I'm Chinese Filipino and I'm non-binary, but even when I write Chinese Filipino non-binary characters, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to write the character in a way that everybody approves of, especially like within the non-binary or within the Chinese Filipino community. The thing that a lot of writers sort of like other writers writing about other races or about other genders seem to be concerned about is whether or not they write them well, which is of course something that they should aspire to. But the thing is, we're not a monolith as well. Like even within like my own community, even within like non-binary community or Filipino or Chinese community, there are going to be people who will be opposed to how I write a character, and there will be people within that same community who also approves of how I wrote that character. So it's not something, there is no character that everybody agrees that everybody would unanimously agree as being the best representation of their ethnicity or of their gender. So that's the one thing that you should start putting. That's what your mindset should be coming in. You're not going to appease everyone. You're not going to gain the appreciation of everybody who is reading about your work. But the thing you need to keep in mind more firmly is to treat the character with respect. That is like treat them in how you would want a white character to be treated that happens to be your protagonist or something like that. So always go into it, do your research. Certainly do your research, do whatever it takes to make sure that you're writing a certain character in as accurate a way as you possibly can. But the most important thing is still to treat them with respect. Like make sure, if there's something there that you're not sure about, always reach out and ask people for advice, ask people whether or not it's good to add something like this into the story. Make sure that you do every amount, like everything you can, just to make sure that this is a well-rounded, complex character of your own making, even if they're of a different gender, even if they're of a different ethnicity or race.
All right. So we're coming into the home stretch for our questions. So let's talk about geek culture because we were talking about the Sandman, we were talking about your books, and geek culture in general, including speculative fiction, has had its share of critics saying that it's still too male dominated. despite a rising number of prominent, well-respected, and well-known female authors and creators. Plus, there is still plenty of hostile, misogynistic, and sexist behavior by male geeks towards female geeks, and also towards anyone who's not male. What do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books or cons, more welcoming for women and girls and non-men?
I think that's a very complicated question to answer because there is no like just one answer that would immediately like explain or show everyone the way exactly how to do it. It's really about waiting for a lot of things. It's just about waiting for the world to change, as that John Mayer song goes. uh you need for something like this to happen in geek culture, to for for better representation of women and of other characters, of LGBTQ characters, to be more prominent in works of fiction. It has to reflect that same representation has to be reflected in real life. I think that you can't really write about boosting women, about boosting LGBTQ people in works if you don't see that happening in your real life. Like, it's going to be a harder push if people don't are so used to the norm, to the status quo, and that they when they see boost like this, support like this in fiction, there a lot of the more smarmier types of people would go, no, you're just virtue signaling, no, you're just trying to trying to make it a marketing ploy to reel in like LGBTQ fans into watching the certain series or the certain show. And there has to be a real paradigm shift, I think. And that is more like it's easier for that paradigm shift to happen if that's what we actually do in our own daily lives, like support women in whatever little way you can. It doesn't have to be something big or something grandiose. It's just how you treat people you interact with on a daily basis is what counts the most. And the biggest problem for that is trying to convince other people that, other people who might be otherwise still resistant to that idea, to do the same thing. That's where I think the problem is going to lie. And that is why, again, I mean, it's great to see representation in media. It's amazing. I want to see more of it, regardless of real life circumstances. But if we want to progress, if we want to shift this away from just supporting women in fiction towards supporting women in like everyday life, that has to happen. Like, our own mindsets have to change. Our own mindsets have to be, we have to be more open to the idea that things will change for the better if we do these, and we try to resolve the issues in our own way for the better. And I think that, again, it's a very complicated question to answer, and I don't think any one of us has that one vital answer that would change everything. It really has to start with everybody else, with as much people as possible, so that things that, the support for women that happens in fiction also sort of sees more of it. We see more of it happening in our daily lives.
Yeah, and speaking of mindsets, parents are usually the most influential role models in a person's life. They are the first people to set our attitudes, to set our perceptions and our mindsets. And as a parent yourself, what do you think parents can do to help prevent violence against women and girls in future generations and to get boys involved in helping to do so?
I think parents should listen more. Like, uh I think when you become a parent, you get so used to the idea of expecting your kids to listen to you just because that has always been how things are. Like, parents should listen to you. You should listen to your elders, you should listen to your parents, and that's something especially that's a big thing here in the Philippines in particular, because we're very family oriented. And I've been raised to, like, listen to your parents even though they're wrong, just obey them whatever happens. That's the sort of mindset that I was raised in. And I think that things would be a lot easier if we actually learn to listen to our kids and listen to what they want in the first place. Like, that's something that I really try my best to ingrain into my kids as well. Like, if there's something that you need help with, if there's something you're struggling with, a problem that, even if you think it's something so small and so simple, uh let I mean please feel free to let me know and I will listen. And at the same time, I try to give them privacy. Like when I was growing up, not just me, like other families I know here as well, like parents would just barge into your rooms without knocking, and they get really really mad when you lock the doors. So, I try to give my kids that level of privacy that I never had when I was growing up. And I want to break the cycle, and I want it to start with me.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm of Chinese heritage as well, and I grew up in Southeast Asia as well. And when you talked about parents, not liking their kids locking the doors and barging into their rooms and things, and setting boundaries is so hard, especially if you're a daughter, because they expect daughters more than sons to have no boundaries, that your parents can order you around and tell you to do everything. And you can't say anything back, because good daughters don't answer back, they don't sass back, right?
That
and
is true.
and like you say, if it's setting those boundaries that is essential. And if you're teaching your kids how to set boundaries, that helps. And I think on the other side of the coin is teaching them to respect other people's boundaries, and other people to respect. This boundary thing seems to get a lot of people into trouble when it comes to boundaries, because at least in Asian culture, the concept of boundaries is it's still new, isn't it? It's not really part
Absolutely.
of our.
Yeah.
We have cultural boundaries, like we have a lot of rituals, we have a lot of things that you can't do it. You have to follow a lot of rules with a lot of things. But when it comes to personal boundaries, it's like a free for all.
Yeah, it sometimes it feels like, parents try to they're like, oh, I gave birth to you, that's why I have the right to interfere in all aspects of your life. Like, going so far to, like, snoop into your phone, or snoop into your diary or a journal or whatever. And that's the worst way to gain the trust of your kids, I believe. Like, the more you snoop, the more they're going to find better ways to hide things from you without you knowing. And I know, like, that was what happened to me growing up. Like, my parents are great. It's just that, again, they didn't really have boundaries, because they're concerned for me, for my well-being, so they want to know things that happen. But there are some things that I find too personal to ever tell them, but they persist. So, I mean, that's something I do not want with my kids. I want to give them privacy, and in exchange, I do hope that they become more honest with me, and they become, like, they learn to trust me with things that would be, important to them. That's the most important thing I want to have with my kids, that kind of relationship.
Yeah, and before we really wrap up, I would like to point out that boundaries are also part of the discussion about consent. Because when you violate someone's boundaries, and this is what happens when you harass someone, when you rape someone, when you assault someone, you are actually violating their boundaries. They did not say yes to you coming into their space. They did not say yes to you touching them. They did not say yes to you haranguing them. And it's part of the discussion about consent. respect rule number, one or two or three, respect other people's boundaries. And when you learn how to respect other people's boundaries, then you're less likely to, you know, violate their consent. Um, so anyway, so we've come to the last question of the day. So you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence against women work as a whole. And this is a Captain Obvious question, but we ask every single author about this. Why do you support the cause to end violence against women? And what do you think authors can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
Well, I mean, obviously, violence against anyone is bad, but more so when it comes to women, because we have so normalized it in our daily lives that we don't even think much about it when we hear things in the news that are disheartening. And you know there's we have to find a way to no longer normalize that, and the best way to do that, I guess, is to do write it in fiction. Like, I mean, I previously said that you can't really things can't really happen even if you write about supporting women in your fiction if that doesn't translate into real life. But again, I try to be very optimistic about things like that. And I also think that the more you write about it, especially when it comes to the younger generation, because what I've talked about earlier was my issues and my problems with dealing with the older generation who refuses to change. But when you start writing books that support women, that support LGBTQ people, with trying to show that, hey, men are allowed to have feelings as well. They have their own emotions and they're allowed to cry if they need to, and to just express themselves however they want. And when you start writing of those works of fiction, and you make them more common for other younger readers to find, I think that's how, again, that I think that's where the mindset starts shifting. That's where the paradigm shift happens. And the more younger readers who familiarize themselves with these kinds of works, the better I think it is for everybody.
All right, so I'm gonna put myself back on screen. Hi, everybody. If you joined us late, I am the disembodied voice off screen chatting to Rin about, violence against women and Rin's books and John Constantine and LGBTQIA representation and all that. So if you joined us late, so let's talk a little bit about Rin's goodies that are up on our Rally Up fundraising page. So the first one is a really, really cool goodie from Rin. So Rin would like to immortalize one very generous donor as a vampire prince or vampire priestess. Now, this is a really rare type of tuckerization treat for one donor in the US, because this is an opportunity to name a major supporting character in the sequel to Silver Under Nightfall. Now, Silver Under Nightfall is Rin's newest book. It's just come out. It's just come out this Friday, right?
Last Tuesday. Last
Okay,
Tuesday.
last Tuesday. Yeah. So it's a really, really cool treat for any donor in the US who will make the donation request attached to it. And you will also get one signed copy of the book when it's released to keep as a memento. I think Rin will be sending a signed book plate, if I'm not mistaken, to go with it, because Rin's in the Philippines and the book will be sent to you direct from her publishers, hot off the press when it comes out. And the donor will have two choices. Okay, so choice number one: name a young male Dampier poised to become a leader of one of the vampire courts, but whose inexperience makes him unable to keep up with the court's political intrigues. And option two is to name a young female priestess who is in charge of a hidden temple that has served the vampire factions for centuries. So, leader of a vampire court or priestess. But if you are that donor and you prefer, your choice of character can be coded as non-binary. And here's the really cool thing: Rin may incorporate some additional aspects of the donor to further customize the character. So it's not just naming the Dampier or the priestess after you. It's encoding some of your you know, cool treats. Um, and please make sure to read the terms and conditions. You can click when you go to our fundraising page. You can click when you click on the description of this truly unique goodie. There will be a link there to take you to the terms and conditions page. Please read it carefully before you make the donation. And also, goodie number two is Rin's books and swag bundle. Book and swag bundle. So we'll be giving away some very exclusive book and swag bundles to 4 Read for Pixels donors in the US. One has already been taken, so there's 3 left. It's first come, first served. So make a donation as quickly as possible to snag one. And you need to reside in the US with a US address to get it. So you'll get one Silver Under Nightfall first edition hardcover together with a cool signed book plate from Rin. And Rin will also send you a set of stickers of Taya and Kaylin from the Bone Witch, Lan, Arjun, Odessa, and Heidi from the Never Tilting World, Tark from The Girl from the Well, Tala, Alex, and the Firebird from Wicked As You Wish. And also, you'll get a set of signed art prints of Taya, Lan, Arjun, Odessa, and Heidi, Tala, and Alex, and also Remy Pendergast from Silver Under Nightfall. And you'll also get 3 enamel pins, one from the Never Tilting World, one from the Bone Witch, and one from Wicked As You Wish. So again, it's first come, first serve. If you're in the US and you want to snag one, either for your own as your own collectibles, or you know someone who would love this as a Christmas present, and the holiday season is coming up, please go snag one now before they all go. And we've raised $1,830 towards a $5,000 goal so far. So it's moving a little slowly. So please give generously or give what you can before the fundraiser ends in October 2022. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women, including the Read for Pixels program, which this is part of. And there are also plenty more author goodies from authors like Namina Forna, Ellen Baxter, Daniel H. Wilson, Kwame Mbalia, Suan Jafarian, Sujata Massey, Eugene Bacon, Charlie N. Holmberg, Tor Books UK, Random House Children's Books, and more. So let's check out where to go. So you can go to https://tinyurl.com/r4prally@2022. This is case sensitive, and also Juliana will be sharing the link in the chat box so that you can just click to go there directly. And you can find out more about the Read for Pixels program. Go to http://bit.ly/read4pixels. Again, it's case sensitive. And also, you can, and I'm going to share this. And also, the classic edition of our first charity anthology, Giving the Devil His Due, where the Twilight Zone meets Promising Young Woman, is now available in both paperback and ebook edition, with the audiobook edition coming soon. So we'll be making an announcement about the audiobook coming soon. And just a little sneak peek, the audiobook includes readings from some of the most prominent award-winning audiobook narrators out there. And Rin, you'll be interested to know that the stories in Giving the Devil His Due, they are all stories that like the excerpt that you read. It's all about abusers and rapists and and misogynists getting their comeuppance in supernatural ways. And also, if you get a copy of Giving the Devil His Due, we have teamed up with 12 other 16 authors to offer an exclusive limited edition anthology book plate for anyone who buys the book. Each author will sign 16 book plates, and it'll be a first come, first serve, or the first come and first serve basis. Each book plate includes a resource for domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors in 205 countries. Now, for more information about the anthology and how to score a book plate, visit http://bit.ly Giving the Devil His Due. Again, this is case sensitive. And for those of you who are interested in getting your very own copy of the anthology, you can order it from major booksellers worldwide, including Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Book Depository, and more. All net proceeds go towards keeping the Pixel Project's campaigns, programs, and initiatives such as this one alive and kicking. And the one thing I want to mention about the book is that at the back of the book, whether it's an ebook or paperback edition, there are 2 pages please make sure to note that there are 2 pages of these of resources for victims and survivors in 205 countries. So if you know someone who's suffering from domestic violence, or if you know a rape victim or survivor who is afraid to come forward, who doesn't know where to get help, this is one of the quiet ways that you can help, which is maybe buy a copy and give it to them, and just maybe add a note saying, please look at the back. There are so many resources. There are links there. If they're on the ebook, they can click on the link to go to the website. If not, they can just they can copy the link uh, into their um, into their tab when they start a search and go straight there. All right. So I'm gonna take this off screen. All right, so before we, and also to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, visit the Pixel Project's website at www.thepixelproject.net. And before we go, Rin has an announcement or two to share with you. So she's mentioned a little bit about it. They have mentioned a little bit, sorry again, Rin. They have mentioned a little bit about it earlier when we were discussing her books and stories and pop culture, but they have two, is it two? One or two splendid announcements to make right now. Over to you, Rin.
Okay, so Silver Under Nightfall actually came out last Tuesday, and here is the US version, and here is the UK version.
Whoa, the
So
UK version is cool.
yeah, it's a
What's that?
first for me.
What's that? What's that thing on visual on the UK version cover?
Oh,
That looks like a
uh,
weapon.
it's a shield, and this is called the Breaker, which is my main character Remy's primary weapon. It's like a double scythe,
Oh,
and
okay.
chain sort of attached at the end, so he can just spin it and slash at vampires and stuff. And
Oh, that's
this is
so
the first,
cool.
yeah, this is the first for me to have the UK version and the US version come out at the same time. So if you're interested in the premise of basically a vampire couple finds a vampire hunter in the trash and takes him in, I think you would like this book. And my second one, because I've been very busy this year, I have another book coming out in 2 weeks, which is on September 27th. It's called The Sacrifice, and it's basically about a group of a Hollywood documentary crew for a ghost hunting team finds their way into a tropical island and proceeds to ignore all the warnings against a supposed sleeping god that is lying waiting within, and chaos happens as a result.
I'm looking forward to that. That's a YA horror, yes?
Yes,
For
it's a YA horror.
yeah.
Silver Under Nightfall is not YA. It's a adult gothic vampire fantasy. So yeah,
Is is this your is if I remember correctly, this is your first adult
it's my
fantasy?
first adult fantasy fiction come out. Hopefully
Oh,
more.
oh, yes. Well, you have the sequel coming out after this. So everyone, again, if you would like to, have a major supporting role in the sequel that is coming out at some point in the future, please, this is the best sort of chance you'll get to get immortalized, like the vampires are immortal forever, except that no one can stake you to death or something, but you'll be read by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people worldwide. So we've come to the end of our session, and thank you so much for being with us today, Rin, and thank you for your patience with me as we natter on.
No worries.
So everyone, have a really good day or good night wherever you are in the world. And if anyone's interested, we are having our next live stream. Two live streams this weekend is tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time. We are hosting Alan Baxter, who is an award-winning horror author. And on Sunday morning Eastern time at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, we are welcoming Namina Forna, who writes The Gilded Ones, which is a really awesome series about sisterhood and pushing back against the system, a brutally patriarchal system. And it's based on uh, Sierra Leonean of myths and fantasy, myths and folk tales, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So join us this weekend. We've got two more to come, and Rin and I will hopefully see you again sometime in the future. Rin's got so many books coming out. Please, please, please get Rin's books to support Rin, and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow evening. Everybody, have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world.